why I'm a big believer in education, but I'm a big believer in learning outside the educational kind of world. So
Absolutely. I think that's brilliant. Thank you for breaking those down. It's an important part of who we are as humans, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So three more. So
Yes.
another one that I think Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit, who is an amazing person. I wrote to her a number of years ago because my son was a perfect example of this. But we're talking about talent versus effort. And I think, our society tends to obsess with outcomes instead of valuing the journey and the ability to be resilient and overcome obstacles. Um, and I just think that talent, people obsess with talent. And I think that talent is great. It's amazing, but it's a starting point. So we
Yeah.
all start with different levels of talent. Carol Dweck talks about this with mindset, with fixed mindset, growth mindset. But the most important thing I think for young adults to understand is talent is just a starting point, and it's your effort that really matters. So Angela Duckworth has this in her book, Grit, has this whole formula. See if I can remember this. So talent times effort equals skill, right? So with some initial talent, wherever you're starting with some effort, you develop a skill set. And then skill times more effort equals achievement or success or whatever it is. So how many times do we mention effort? Twice. So her point is effort counts twice. So if you have twice as much, in theory, Francesca, if you have twice as much talent, starting talent as I do, if I work twice as hard as you, we may end up at the same point in theory.
Right.
So
Right.
it's really leaning into effort versus what we see with whether it's Instagram or whatever, this endpoint. No one talks about the journey. So um, your
Yeah, I
thoughts on that?
love that. Yeah, what I love about that is what came up for me was how we're defining success, right? It
Right.
doesn't have to be by a particular title. I love that formula that you mentioned
Yeah.
and defining our success for us, right? And this,
Right.
for me personally, not to bring it always back to me, but that's where I'm making this connection is how much fun are we having? Let's make sure we're being productive, but how are we measuring that? And how are we measuring success and what are we calling it? So we're
Right.
redefining, not only reframing our mindset, but redefining success here, which I think is brilliant.
Absolutely. And the great thing about success or meaning is we get to decide what that is. And I can't speak for every young adult in their parent relationship, but I would think for the most part, parents would love for their young adult to eventually find something that they love, work hard at, and be good at, and make a living at. But we just said before, there are some parents that they have a view of what their child should be, and expectation. The word expectation is a pretty heavy word. It can mean a lot of different things. It can be healthy, but I do think in this day and age, it's used in a very unhealthy way. But again, that's a
Yeah.
whole different subject matter.
Whole
But
different, yeah, whole different episode.
yeah,
Could be a whole series. Yeah.
right. So on effort,
Yeah.
I want to kind of dovetail into point number five: effort versus opportunity. So Angela Duckworth, and she was so great in handling this. Her book was groundbreaking. Uh, Multiple millions of copies that were sold, and people pushed back on, resilience is everything, and it does mean a lot. But opportunity, there are people that have worked very, very hard, and unfortunately, never had the opportunity to see their vision come to light. So effort is vital, but I think effort alone isn't always enough. I think there is a lack of opportunity. But here's the important thing that I talk to young adults about. Ultimately, it's up to us to to create the opportunity for ourselves. So there are some people that could just be like, "Hey, I busted my ass, and you know nothing's happened," and just sitting back. And I'm obviously painting a very specific picture, but we really have to think about how can I put myself out there in the world and surround myself around an area of interest where serendipity happens. And all of a sudden I run into people, or I learn how to network. So we do an entire day, literally 6 different chapters on how to master and the art and skill of networking. So if you can combine effort, preparation, and effort with learning how to create opportunities, good things are going to happen for you.
I hear that. And what came up for me that time around, Peter, is, you know, if we're that person that says, okay, I've done everything that I can do, and they put their hands down and give up, well, you're not, like you said, you're not giving yourself that chance. And why is it that you're holding yourself back? And I think in the previous mindset shifts that we're offering here, once we have that belief in ourselves, that knowing, we're not going to hold ourselves back. Like, okay, so I've done 10 emails or whatever it is. I know that there's 10 more opportunities out there. It's that knowing that something is out there for you that will keep you from holding yourself back. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes. Yeah. And you brought up a great point. So part of creating opportunities, and whether that's networking, whatever it is being able to handle rejection. And I know that seems obvious and everyone knows it, but when you're in the face of it, it can be difficult. And I could speak from experience. I was in sales for 30 years. Now, I worked at some great places, especially ESPN, but it was a very competitive world. And we dealt with rejection all the time. And then shifting to what I've done now, these past 8 years in building this company, I don't work at ESPN anymore. My phone calls were always answered. If I needed a meeting, I could get a meeting. And again, there was a level of rejection. Well, now, but one of the first things I said to myself is, "Hey, Peter, you don't work at a major global company anymore." So I deal with rejection every day. And even though everyone understands how incredibly important this is, every day I deal with that. But when you build that level of meaning inside and you get behind something, and this is the last point that we're going to talk about, when you have that level of passion or interest or level of meaning, that's what carries you through. So part of creating opportunity for young adults is you are going to be rejected. And again, I'm generalizing, but I think this generation tends to be very risk adverse, because put yourself in their position. From day one, every single facet of their lives has been on the grand public scale. When you and I were younger, we made mistakes. No one knew about it, or very few people knew about it. But their entire world, you know, in theory, is on social media. So they tend to not want to take risks. And again, that's a broad generalization, but I think we need to get beyond that. So one of the things we talk about all the time is there's no growth without discomfort, whether that's taking care of your body, your mind, learning, but also rejection. So keep putting yourself in these positions. And maybe you'll be a little bit uncomfortable in introducing yourself to someone. Power through that, and you're going to get better. And introspect and think about, and then you'll get better and better and better. And it's amazing how the universe opens up for you.
I love how that just came up and talking about rejection, because I think we need to stick
Super
with that.
important.
Super important, not just as young adults, but throughout adulthood. So thank
Right.
you for
Right.
amplifying that point.
So that
So I think
opportunity may not happen on the first one, but it may happen on the 5th or 10th one. So hang in there and understand rejection is just part of the process.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're up to the last one.
Up to the last one.
So this is like it's a subject matter that comes up all the time. So the P word, passion, right? And I always say to young adults, like, how many of you have heard throughout your life, you need to find your passion, you need to follow your passion, like a million times, right? We've all heard that. And I'm a big believer in that. I'm a passionate person. I do think it's wonderful to eventually get to the point where you have a passion. But how you develop it and when you develop it, I think is really important. And I think the kind of silly analogy I use is, let's say I was 25 years old, and I decided I really want to get married. That's my priority right now. I really want to get married. Would I walk into a bar one night and be like, tonight I'm going to meet my wife or partner, whoever, right? I know that sounds silly, but
Yeah,
I think there's an important thing here. Like, so why are we of course, that's ridiculous, right? You meet people through all different worlds and it develops over time. And right. So in that analogy, if you met someone, I know so many couples that that have wonderful marriages, when they first met, it wasn't like fireworks went off and they were like, oh my God, the love of my life. They were just like, oh, there's something about this person. And then they saw each other again and they worked out. All of a sudden, it came together. And I think that's a good analogy for passions. So start with something that makes you curious, something that you're like, I don't know what it is, but like when I'm doing this, like I lose sense of time and I'm like, it's an interest of mine. So just take the pressure off and find something and kind of foster and cultivate that interest. And over time, it may turn into a passion. It may not. And then you find something else that you're curious about. So I think it's really important to kind of explore and prototype different areas that interest you, and then take a direction with that and put in the work. And then I think that's a really healthy way of doing it. So, you know, putting the pressure on a 60-year-old that you need to know what your passion is. I mean, we know 35, 40-year-olds that don't know what their passions are right now.
exactly. Exactly.
But, be curious, read, listen to podcasts, kind of, do all that prototyping. And then even if you're not sure, go down that road for a while. And maybe you have a current job and you're doing this on the side, but I think that's a much healthier way to do it.
Yeah, I
Fostering and
love.
cultivating interests that can turn into a passion. It generally doesn't happen like that. It can. There are some kids that know, when they were 5 years old, they wanted to be whatever, a doctor or a policeman or policewoman,
Right.
but that's unusual. That's unusual.
It is unusual. And it's great that you mentioned that because, yeah, there are people who I remember as children, this one kid in class would always crack his knuckles. Well, guess what he ended up doing? He's a chiropractor, right? That made absolute sense,
Oh my God,
right?
it's hilarious.
It was hilarious. I'll never forget him like cracking his knuckles all throughout class. But I love how you mentioned that it might not be something so quick to turn into. So like be patient with yourself and listen to yourself and know that I love how you said, because I listen to this all the time, is when you lose sense of time, you're getting closer to that
Right.
knowing of where you should be spending your time, because you're like, oh my gosh, wow, I've been doing this for 4 hours and it feels like it's 1 hour. Like you and I, like we're talking, we could talk for hours. It just feels
Right.
so
Right.
natural, right? In this sense. So
Can I
um,
clarify one thing for parents, Francesca? Because
please do.
there may be some parents saying, okay, Peter, but my son or daughter is on Fortnite for 3 hours a night. Is
Oof.
that losing sense of time? Now, there's a small percentage of those people that may be game designers someday. Okay, so small percentage. So I want to just qualify that. So
Please.
when you're losing a sense of time and it's something that you want to continue to learn and interest and foster. And by the way, spending in support of young adults, that time on Fortnite, and a lot of times it's a community thing now, can turn into a different field. But if it is getting in the way of you exploring other interests or working on your body or mind or doing school, then I don't that's a different type of thing. But I think if you're like, wow, I just can't stop reading books on this subject matter, that's the universe whispering to you a little bit. So I just wanted to qualify that.
No, I totally appreciate that. Right, because social media or YouTube videos, endless hours. It happens even younger now because kids are getting cell phones at a younger age and they have
Right.
access to the internet and all that stuff out there. So I appreciate you clarifying that for
Sure.
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 Yeah. So this is great. We've covered, incredible topics here today, Peter.
Oh,
Um,
thanks.
so what do we want to leave the audience with today? Patience, understanding. What's a key word you think?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do here. So this is literally we did a super express version of one chapter, 36 chapters. There's action items that young adults do. I would just say for young adults and for parents, I think what we're trying to do here is opening up people's worlds first. Because if you have been told, sadly, you're a piece of crap and you're not going to amount to anything, and that is not a line. I've heard that from dozens and dozens of young adults and full-fledged adults, that they were either told that directly or implied
Yeah.
that. So if you've been told that, what's your palette or bandwidth of interest? It's going to be pretty limited. You're an athlete, you're a dumb jock, and like just stay in your lane, or you're not going to amount to anything. So what we're trying to do here is really just first open up people's world, and then slowly but surely start to carve in, and don't be afraid to take a general direction. It's okay, especially in your teens. I think your 20s should be all about exploration and experimentation, right? I mean, the average young adult is going to have 12 to 15 different jobs, up to 4 to 7 different careers in their lifetime. Kind of tough to define what a career is, but so understand, like, you don't need the perfect job right out of school, but if you're trying to pay off student debt or something, maybe you're going to take a job that you're good at, that maybe doesn't light up your, feed your soul initially, but always try and discover what interests you and what you're curious about. So I think curiosity is probably the most important thing, and understand that you can always shift your mindset, and you have neuroplasticity. You can make new connections the rest of your life. So just work at
Wow.
it. And
Wow.
and by the way, I think I mentioned to you, so the program, after many, many years of development, will be available end of summer. I would say like the August, September period. So for
Excellent.
anybody that's interested, you can go on gokindling.com, GOKINDLING.com, and
Excellent.
opt in, and we'll keep you up to date on when this is coming out.
I appreciate you mentioning that, because I was just going to ask you, for those who are curious and listening to this incredible knowledge that you've shared, and it's gokindling.com, and I will include that link in the show notes,
Awesome.
Peter, to make it nice and easy for them. Are there any other links you want me to direct them to? Is that the main one?
Yeah, I mean, we're Go Kindling on Instagram, and
Okay,
you can either connect or follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook. But the
right.
most important thing is just go on the site, look around. You can look at the curriculum, and if you're interested at all, just opt in. I mean, obviously, there's no financial commitment there. You'll be on our email list, and you'll be up to date as to when we're officially making the program available.
Excellent. I'll make sure we put that all in there for you. And I thank you for
Awesome,
your time and sharing your
awesome.
brilliance today, Peter. I appreciate you.
Thanks so much, Francesca.
Stay
Best of
well.
luck to you. Keep kicking
Thank
butt.
you.
Doing great.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
Okay,
Bye bye.
bye-bye.